It was an autumn evening in downtown Chicago. The streets were alive with hurried pedestrians, the neon glow of store signs reflecting off the rain-slick pavement. Ava Richardson adjusted the cuffs of her dark blue trench coat as she crossed the street. Tonight was supposed to be quiet, just an evening walk before her first official day as the city's new chief of police. But fate had other plans. The shrill blare of a police siren sliced through the air. A patrol car screeched to a halt beside her. "Hey, you. Stop right there." Ava turned slowly. Two officers, Detectives Ryan Carter and Mike Sullivan, stepped out of the vehicle, hands hovering over their holsters. "Is there a problem, officers?" Ava asked calmly, her deep brown eyes locking onto Carter's. Carter scowled. "Step aside. Keep your hands where we can see them." Ava frowned. "Excuse me?" "You match the description of a suspect involved in a robbery earlier tonight," Sullivan added, his tone laced with authority. Ava let out a slow breath. She knew exactly what this was. "How do I match the description?" she asked, folding her arms. Carter smirked. "Black, female, dark clothing." Ava clenched her jaw. That could have described hundreds of women in the city. She knew she could shut this down in an instant. She could pull out her badge, reveal her identity, and watch their expressions crumble. But instead, she let it play out. She wanted to see how far these officers would go when they thought they had power over her. "I haven't done anything wrong," Ava said evenly. "Turn around," Carter ordered. "Am I being detained?" Sullivan's patience snapped. "We don't have time for this. Hands behind your back now." Before she could respond, Carter grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back. The metal cuffs clicked shut around her wrists. And at that moment, they made the biggest mistake of their careers. The streets fell into stunned silence. A small crowd had gathered, their eyes wide with disbelief. "Hey, she didn't do anything," someone shouted. "She was just walking, man." "Let her go," another added. But Carter and Sullivan ignored them. They shoved Ava towards the squad car, pushing her into the back seat. Ava sat still, her breathing steady. She'd been in countless dangerous situations before, but this felt different. It wasn't about her safety. It was about justice. As the car sped toward the precinct, Carter picked up the radio. "Dispatch, we've got a female suspect in custody. Possible connection to the robbery at 8th and Madison." "Name?" the dispatcher asked. Carter glanced at Ava through the rearview mirror. "She hasn't given one yet." Ava's lips curled into a slight smirk. They had no idea. As the patrol car pulled into the station, Ava remained composed. She stepped out, her wrists still cuffed, and every officer in the precinct froze. Deputy Commissioner Thomas Reed rushed forward, his face turning pale. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded. Carter and Sullivan stiffened. "Sir, we arrested this woman under suspicion of robbery." Reed's eyes blazed. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Sullivan frowned. "Sir, she matched the suspect's description." "Take off her cuffs." "Right. Now." Carter hesitated. "But sir." "I said now." Sullivan scrambled to unlock the cuffs. Ava rubbed her wrists, her expression unreadable. Then, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her badge. The golden emblem gleamed under the fluorescent lights. She raised it slowly, deliberately, making sure every single officer in the room saw it. "Chief Ava Richardson," she announced, her voice like steel. Carter and Sullivan's faces drained of all color. The room was deathly silent. Carter's mouth opened, but no words came out. Sullivan swallowed hard. "Chief, we, didn't know." Ava finished for him. She took a slow step forward, towering over them now. "That's the problem, isn't it? You assumed. You saw a black woman and thought, suspect. Not a citizen. Not a professional. Not a human being. Just a suspect." Carter stammered. It was a misunderstanding. Ava let out a humorless laugh. "A misunderstanding? You racially profiled me, humiliated me in public, and failed to follow basic protocol. If I were any other citizen, my night might have ended differently." Her voice dropped. "Tell me, Officer Carter, what would have happened if I had resisted?" Carter had no answer. Deputy Commissioner Reed turned to the watching officers. These men have embarrassed this department. Effective immediately, they are suspended pending a full investigation. Sullivan's eyes widened. Sir, please. You don't get to beg. Ava cut in coldly. You don't get to play the victim. She turned to the entire precinct. This stops today, she declared. If you think this badge gives you power over innocent people, think again. If you abuse your authority, you'll answer to me. A new era had begun. The moment Ava walked out of the precinct that night, she knew it wasn't over. Not even close. By the time she reached her apartment, her phone was already blowing up with notifications. The video had surfaced. Someone in the crowd had recorded every second of the arrest. The footage showed Carter gripping Ava's arm, twisting it behind her back, the cold steel of the handcuffs snapping shut around her wrists. It showed the fear in the bystanders' eyes, the disbelief, the quiet murmurs of protest. And it captured, in painful, undeniable clarity, the moment Ava revealed her badge. By the time Ava sat down, the video had already been shared over 1 million times. The captions were brutal. Chicago cops arrest their own police chief because she's black. When racism meets karma, officers regret this arrest. You won't believe who they just handcuffed. Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok were on fire. The hashtags #JusticeForAva and #EndPoliceBias were trending worldwide. Ava exhaled sharply. This was bigger than her now. The whole country was watching, and she had to decide what happened next. The next morning, the Chicago PD was in crisis mode. Deputy Commissioner Reed sat across from Ava in his office, rubbing his temples. This is a disaster, he muttered. The mayor is demanding answers. The governor is involved. There are already protests planned outside the precinct. Ava folded her arms. Good. Reed looked up sharply. Good. She leaned forward. This isn't a disaster. This is a wake-up call. People are angry because they've seen the truth. This department has a problem, and now we can't ignore it. Reed sighed. What do you want to do? Ava didn't hesitate. First, I want Carter and Sullivan suspended without pay. Second, I want an independent review of racial profiling cases over the last 5 years. Third, I want mandatory anti-bias training for every single officer on the force. Reed looked skeptical. That's a lot of demands. Ava met his gaze, her voice cold and sharp. I am not asking. For a long moment, Reed said nothing. Then he nodded. I'll make the calls. But Ava wasn't done. She had one more demand. I want a press conference. Reed frowned. Why? Ava's jaw clenched. Because the world is watching, she said. And I'm going to tell them exactly what happened. The press conference was set for 6 p.m. sharp in front of City Hall. By 5:30, the streets were already packed. News cameras lined the barricades. Protesters held signs that read, Loudspeaker, justice for all. Loudspeaker, cops need accountability. Loudspeaker, bias has consequences. Ava stepped onto the stage. Every eye was on her. She adjusted the microphone, then took a deep breath. And then she began. Last night I was arrested, she said, her voice steady but powerful. Not because I committed a crime. Not because I broke the law. But because of what I look like. The crowd was silent. I was handcuffed, humiliated, and thrown into the back of a police car by my own officers. Gasps rippled through the audience. This is not just my story. This is the story of countless Black men and women who are judged not by their actions, but by their skin color. Who are stopped, searched, and harassed simply for existing. She looked straight into the cameras. This department needs change. And it starts today. Thunderous applause erupted. Ava wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for everyone who had ever been silenced. 1 week later, Ava sat in her office, reading over the final reports. Carter and Sullivan? Fired. The independent review? Approved by the mayor. Anti-bias training? Mandatory for every officer, effective immediately. Change was happening. A soft knock at the door made her look up. It was a young Black woman in a police uniform, Officer Maya Lewis. Chief, Maya said hesitantly. Ava smiled. Come in. Maya stepped forward, nervous but determined. I wanted to say thank you. You don't know how much it means to see someone like you in this position. Ava's heart swelled. She thought about all the battles she had fought, all the injustice she had witnessed. And she knew this was just the beginning. Keep fighting, Ava said softly. We have a long way to go. Maya nodded, her eyes shining. And as she walked out, Ava knew. She wasn't just the first Black female chief of police. She was part of a new generation of justice. A generation that would never be silenced again.